G'day listeners, welcome to another episode of the Snowies Camping Show. You're joined again by Ben and Lauren. And if you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe either via YouTube, your favourite podcast app, or jump in on the conversation with us and the rest of the community at the Snowies Camping Show Facebook group. We are doing a destination episode today. People have asked about destinations. Now, we haven't been everywhere, but we've collated a heap of information on a destination today, and that is Uluru. Now, I keep falling back into saying Ayers Rock, which is what it was previously known as, right? But Uluru is the traditional name for it. So I apologise in advance if I fall back into old methods and keep saying Ayers Rock, but I mean to say Uluru.
Awesome.
But we're covering off, there's a lot of information to kind of cover off on.
Well, I think the reason why we did it is we picked this as our first sort of trip episode is that it's in the centre of Australia and
It's iconic.
It's iconic. If you haven't been there, generally you do want to go, and people who have gone think it's amazing and all this sort of stuff. I've personally been before, but flown in to Alice Springs and then gone out. But that was just sort of by myself with my sort of all adult families for my past 70th birthday, which was awesome. Yep. But I want to do that with the family, and it's too expensive to fly in and just really not viable. So the road trip element of it is awesome.
It's a good road trip, yeah. Probably one thing I will note, I lived in Alice Springs for about 3 years.
Okay.
I went to Ayers Rock once. It wasn't a place I regularly because it is a popular tourist destination and I like my space. I said Ayers Rock, Uluru. You hate it when I say that. I don't know why. I know it's Uluru, but I keep saying Ayers Rock. But anyway, it's important to know that it's actually about 450 kilometres from Alice Springs. Yeah. It's not nearby. I heard a lot of people who'd rock up and they come into the shop I worked out there and they say, Ayers Rock's a long way away. We're just going to pop out for the afternoon and have a look. It's not right near Alice Springs. It's a long way out.
That surprised me as well because when we did it, we went on like a big bus that drove us out there and it was ages and the bus driver had this microphone and just drawled on the most monotonous conversation the whole time because I think he thought he was funny or he was trying to entertain everyone, but it wasn't. It was really bad and it was a really long way.
Quite often people who fly in don't even see Alice Springs because they go to the airport, they get a bus from the airport to Uluru, back to the airport and fly out again. So, but it is a fair way. But anyway, if you're doing the road trip though, we're in Adelaide, South Australia. It's a easy way to get there. I mean, it's a long drive, but we just go north up Stuart Highway. That's the simplest way to get there. Four-wheel drive. You only need two-wheel drive for the Stuart Highway. It's sealed the whole way. It didn't used to be that way going back probably 30 or 40 years ago. Yeah. But you can follow bitumen all the way to Uluru. Yeah.
And there's a couple of like pretty big towns that you can stop off at, like Port Augusta, Cooper Pedy, I think Marla even. Along the way. So it's a very serviceable route.
And lots of fun things to see. Like Cooper Pedy, you can stay in an underground hotel. There's the mines to look at. There's weird sculptures along the way. Most of the homesteads along the way where you get fuel have also got like emus or things that you can stop and look at with the kids. So there's plenty of stops along the way. So,
I think you can also, if you're going from Adelaide and you want to sort of take a little bit more time, if you've got time, you can go up, I think it's called the Flinders route. It's called the Outback Highway, where you sort of go just before Port Augusta, you turn due north and it takes you back through like oh my gosh, I'm having a brain break now.
You mean the towns to the east of the highway?
Some of the towns like more east and you go straight up through the actual Flinders Ranges and then you sort of loop back in towards Cooper Pedy. So that's a good alternative
lots of ways to get there. If you're coming from other locations though, like if it's Perth or Victoria or possibly even Sydney, you're probably going to have to kind of come down around to near Adelaide and then north from there is my understanding. There are other paths across, but you're going to need to be well prepared with full drive and the likes. Simpson Desert, you cross that way, but you're going to need a lot of preparation to do that.
Would you say is it the Barkly Highway from Queensland?
Yeah, going right up north, there's a Barkly Highway which is sealed and that comes in just near Tennant Creek. So even then it's still above Alice Springs and then you've got to drive to Alice Springs and then another 450 k's down to Uluru.
Coming from Melbourne as well, you can also go up through the Riverland, through Mildura and sort of cut across there.
Yep.
If you're coming from Perth, you would just, when I was over on the Eyre Peninsula, they were saying that along the sort of western side of Eyre Peninsula, there's a huge portion of holiday shacks are owned by people who actually live in Alice Springs because it's the quickest and closest coast for them to just come straight down. So you could probably go straight across the Nullarbor and then sort of up from Eyre Peninsula.
Yep. Yeah. So lots of ways to get there. Simplest is straight across the Stuart Highway and up. If we won't go into any details on other routes because it's going to require a lot of planning, especially if you're looking at the Simpson or if you're coming in from the northern end of Western Australia. There are other. I will mention the Uluru-Kata track though, because it can just be a big dirt highway, and I know people who've done that in 2-wheel drive. If you're going to do that, just call ahead, call some of the road houses and say, what's the road like? Because if it's just been graded, it could be a really easy drive. And sometimes if you're looking for a bit of a rough 4-wheel drive corrugation, you can be bitterly disappointed because it's just a
nice and smooth.
And there's lots of things to see on the Uluru-Kata track there as well.
Yeah. I think the good sort of point to mention though is a large portion of what we're talking about for the most part is 2-wheel drive. So over the last couple of years, the roads and everything you can do the red centre in 2-wheel drive. It's really accessible now for both options.
Even getting around Yulara and the Olgas, Uluru, all of that is all sealed. It's 2-wheel drive. There is a track that goes from, if we look, we got maps in front of us here, back from Yulara through Curtin Springs and up to the Wataka, which is
National Park there.
I'm trying to think of the non-traditional name is Kings Canyon. That's well worth a look. And then you can take a loop, which is the Morini Loop, which goes back through the West Max into Alice Springs if you're going to go up to Alice Springs. Now, that is a dirt road. You need a permit for it, but you want to just check the condition before you do it, but is potentially 2-wheel drive accessible, but check before you go and go prepared because it's still a long, remote dirt road. So.
And it's we're talking a lot about Uluru, but you mentioned the Olgas before, which is now known as Kata Tjuta.
Kata Tjuta.
Yeah, it's Uluru-Kata Tjuta National Park.
Okay, yep.
And they're a really good option as well. So it's not like if you're driving, you're driving out to Yulara, your only option is Uluru, and then you sort of do it and then you go on. Like there's lots of stuff around there.
Yeah, you can immerse yourself a bit more in the Olgas. You can sort of walk between a lot of it, whereas Ayers Rock you walk around. It's a massive monolith and it's well worth a look, but the Olgas is a slightly different experience, but definitely worth a look. We didn't mention, actually, I'm just looking at this road here that comes in from the west, Great Central Road, or I don't know how to say this, Jukaruru Road. That's the traditional owner's name, or Docker River Road. It's got a few different names there, but you need a permit to come in that way. That's Aboriginal land. So if you're doing that, do your research. But if you're just in 2-wheel drive, go to the Stuart Highway, either from the north or the south and straight up or down.
Awesome.
Yeah. Campsites. So you can't just camp anywhere on the roadside. There used to be kind of in Central Australia, used to be fairly, I know when I lived there, it was fairly open. In some spaces you could just kind of camp everywhere, but they're trying to stamp down on that a little bit, probably from what we talked about in past episodes, of people not really looking after the ground and trying to keep a rein in on the land not being destroyed, and also things like bushfires and rubbish and all that sort of thing. But there are plenty of stops along the Stuart Highway. If you're in a car and you're happy to do long days, then like a drive from, say, if you're from Adelaide to Cooper Pedy is probably a day, and then you probably almost get to Yulara, and the next day would be a long drive, but then there's some homestays.
I did look in like Adelaide to Cooper Pedy was something like a 10 and a bit hour drive.
It's a fair drive.
And then Cooper Pedy, if you go straight to Yulara, is like 7.5 hours drive.
Yeah.
So, if you really wanted to, you could probably just do an overnight stop at Cooper Pedy. But you'd be pretty smashed.
We used to do it as a couple, my wife and I, when we drove back and forward. We'd do it in an overnight, try and do a really big day, like 10 or 12 hours in the car sharing driving, and then a shorter day the next day. But it is a fair drive.
It depends if you've got kids. Like me and my partner would easily be able to do that. So, but if you got kids, it's another story.
Yeah. But lots of stops, like just stop and take it in along the way. I'd say plan for at least 2 stops along the way if you've got kids, because it's going to be a long drive otherwise. And when you get there,
so Yulara's not like a town. It's actually like a resort town. It's not like a town in the sense that it's a city. It's sort of like a combination of different sort of accommodations, because I remember there's like an actual campsite section, and then there's like a proper hotel section, and then there's more of like a cabin section, and you've got like little shops and supermarkets and things all interwoven within that. So it's probably worth mentioning that that's probably a little bit on the expensive side if you're sort of rocking up there and wanting to keep really thoroughly supplied. So it's probably a good idea in your stops on the way to build your supplies just through standard supermarkets and things like that to save yourself a bit of money.
Yeah, probably a good idea. There's a whole range of accommodation from really fancy down to camping, but it's expensive for what it is. And the people who live at Yulara live there because they work on the resort. So it's there as a purpose for that accommodation.
Yeah.
But you can stay in other places, I suppose, but you're outside of the park. Like I think what's the one further back? Curtin Springs is further back. I don't know if there's a charge for that or not, but you can, I think it used to be or may still be a free spot to camp. Don't quote me on that.
I can actually have a little look here. You keep talking and I'll look it up.
But that you can stay outside of the camp then, and then you can drive in and out of the national park. But even that still, it's 100 Ks out.
No charge for unpowered sites.
Okay, for unpowered sites, right.
No bookings or reservations, first in, first serves. You can book powered sites there, but availability is limited.
I guess that could change with the demand that's around nowadays. They might change those things.
Yeah.
But it is 100 Ks from Curtin Springs to Yulara, so got to allow for that driving time back and forth.
Yeah, we've got here that generally a tent site which is powered at Yulara is around 52 a night, and unpowered is around 43 a night.
Yeah, which is on the high side for an unpowered campsite.
And it's also another thing is when I went there, I sort of did assume that it was going to be a lot closer to Uluru itself, but it's not. It's about 20 Ks out from Uluru.
Yulara.
That's
right. Yeah, yeah. Whereas Uluru itself is set up just for buses and, tourist day trips and that sort of thing to come in, park, do your thing and then get out of. Yeah. I've just got another note here. Obviously, if you're doing any travel outside of that area, that national park, you need a permit. So don't go there assuming you can just go bush bashing and go wherever you want. You need a permit. So stick to the roads. If you're going anywhere else, do your research, get permission to go there. National park bookings. It is a national park, so you need to pay for access. Have I skipped anything here? I feel like you're looking at this list going, you've missed something.
We've got a lot of notes, so I'm just sort of quickly reading through to make sure we're not missing anything.
While you look, I'll just mention national park bookings. So I'm pretty sure that's the same national park for, Wataka and Uluru-Kata Tjuta National Park. From my memory, it's the same pass for both of those, but it's about $40 odd. We'll just double check that now. We should have done that research beforehand. We've got it noted here as 30 per adult for the bookings, but I'm pretty sure it's the same for both of them. And if you do the Marini loop back to Alice Springs, you also need a permit for that because that goes through Aboriginal land. So you need a permit to go through that Aboriginal land. So there's a few extra costs there as well, but definitely worth paying for it because it's all worth seeing. So you wouldn't want to go that far and not just spend $40 on a permit because you wanted to save $40.
I'm just having a quick look here on the Northern Territory Department of Environment and Parks and Water, because I know that sort of within South Australia, for example, you can buy a generic parks pass, which covers you for all national parks within the state. Like it is a bit more expensive, but I don't have immediate information on that one. It looks like it possibly a full parks pass here might not be introduced until 2022 or 23, just as a quick look on the website. But if you are going to do the Red Centre and you are going to be going to lots of different national parks and have a plan, that might be a really good economical option for you to save having to arrange multiple different passes for multiple different parks. So
good one. And these things change all the time. So
they do.
This is kind of what I'm going by what I knew in the past. I think it's probably changed to what it is now and it's going to change in the future. So just do your research around what you need there.
Says here the best time of the year to visit is sort of May and September. Generally temperatures are between 20 and 30 degrees. And it's also important to sort of keep your eye out for festivals and other big main events that are happening around Alice Springs and the area because obviously then you can avoid heaps of people or, there's probably going to be lots of booking up and things like that. It probably might be worth considering heading in the off season. I mean, not sure that you want to go in the middle of summer, but more into winter because you'll probably be avoiding the peak tourist season. So, avoiding lots of people and things like that. And you're probably also going to be saving a little bit of money because off-peak rates and things do tend to be a little bit cheaper.
I think in my experience, the peak rate sort of went through that shoulder season, even through winter. That was the busy time, because even though it's cold here, it's not as cold. They're cold nights, but nicer days.
Okay.
Where it can be sunny but still icy air. So I think the cheaper rates are often in the really hot environments because it's 40 degrees plus all the time. That's usually when I would go because I was avoiding the crowds.
Yeah, totally.
But
I don't mind a bit of hot weather.
Yeah, if you're okay with hot weather, then jump in on the hot season because it will be quieter.
Mind you, though, I did see, sorry to just interrupt you, I did see somewhere, I can't remember where it was on a blog or something, someone had taken a photo of the free sort of tour around Uluru that you can go on with the Anangu guide or something. It was off season. There probably would have been at least 60 people in that tour, and they run multiple tours a day, and that's just one of the tours. So I don't think you possibly can go without there being a butt ton of people there.
There'll be people, and because it's bus loads, those buses pull in and they booked in for that tour, so that entire bus is on the tour. So don't go, if you go there and get a solitary experience, then you're very lucky.
Yeah.
If you go there and get rain on the rock, you're even luckier too.
Yeah, I would literally love to see that.
Yeah. But it's going to be busy. Probably any time of the year almost.
They do recommend that if you are sort of going to head out there and go for a walk around and things, you sort of only do that on a cooler day because it is a big loop. I think it's like 17. Is it 17 Ks?
Yeah, it's like a 3 hours loop. So that's the other thing. People, they don't realise it's 450 Ks from Alice Springs, and then they don't realise just how long it takes to walk around because it is a massive rock. It's not just a wander around the rock. It's a day hike around the rock. So I remember seeing people with very red faces, not enough water. They've had a lot of issues with people who just don't go or understand that it's hot, it's dry, and it's much further than you might think it is. It is a big rock.
Yeah, huge. And I think also you mentioned before how it's really cold at night but can be quite hot in the day. Being prepared for that because you're going to need to pack things for like real winter type temperatures at night.
Yep.
Even once the sun sort of goes down, it gets cold pretty quick, but then really hot during the day. So
so you're stripping clothes off and then you put them all back on again.
Yeah. Make sure you have hats and, fire nets and all that sort of jazz.
Yep. A few stats here.
348 meters high, Uluru. It's one of the world's largest monoliths and it's 550 million years old.
It's old.
Yeah, so we mentioned the Anangu before. They're the traditional owners, the landowners there, and the Uluru-Kata Tjuta National Park it's a pretty massive culturally for them, has a huge amount of significance there. So it's always really important when you go there to be massively respectful and view it not just, yes, you're a tourist, but also be conscious of the fact that it's an amazing learning experience for you to be there.
Yep.
And the fact that we're even allowed to go there at all and, we have permission there to share in that significance and the importance of that is really, really valuable.
Yep.
So being open to sort of learning about the culture.
I think it's very easy just
it's
to
really important.
It's easy for us to roll up and say, I want this photo, I want to do this, or I want to do that. But it's a little bit like if someone just come into our house and said, I just want to take photos in your lounge room or something like that. It's probably, I don't know if that's a good comparison, but it's trying to get people to understand that just to be respectful, that I think we went too far without sort of understanding the significance that places like this had culturally with our ancestors.
Yeah.
And we're trying to pull that back a little bit and just understand that this is a really important place and there's spots around the rock that are even more important than the rock itself. Certain little pockets of space that have a massive cultural significance.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. So the sort of general activities and things to do around Yulara itself and sort of an Uluru-based trip, I will say that where we stayed in the little cabiny guest house area, which is sort of the middle of the range one when we went. And just in behind there was this little mini viewing, you walk up this little sand dune, there was a viewing platform at the top.
Yep.
And it was literally the most incredible thing ever, even seeing it from afar, I think, because going up close to it, the severe magnitude of it is very overwhelming. But I think seeing it from afar, it's it's almost like it's alive, like it sort of moves and the colours change, and it's just literally magical. So don't knock experiencing it from afar. Like don't necessarily – does that sort of make sense?
Definitely. And the sunrise sunset time is a really good time to see it because the sky changes colour and the rock changes colour with whatever's happening in the sky and whatever clouds are happening in the sky. And it's just, I mean, go and take a bit of a packed snack or a cheese board or something like that and some wine and just soak that up and just enjoy the space and like you say, enjoy it from afar. Definitely. There is rock art around the rock itself. If you can do ranger guided walks, and quite often usually that's a Indigenous ranger, so someone who's knows from a family perspective a lot of history on the rock. They're not just talking from because they read it from a book. They actually have some history behind it, and you can. When I was there you'd learn a lot of cultural things around food and. It can be really immersive for the kids to see how our Aboriginal people do things in the past, and those rangers bring that into a lot of those walks, so it can be really valuable. And they'll talk about the rock art. We'll pull back too on the respect for the space. Some of those spaces that they show you, they ask you not to take photos of, and just respect that and don't take photos of it. There is a reason it might look to us like it's just a photo. What does it matter? But to them, it's really important. So
definitely
a lot of spaces to respect there. There is a big cultural centre there as well, which it's a lot of years since I've been there, so it's probably changed a lot, but if it's anything like it was, you can immerse yourself in all that information for quite a while.
There's also things like bicycle hire, which is awesome if you're not taking – I don't know if you can take your own bikes in there or if you do want to bike, it's bicycle hire only. I'm not 100% sure. So we might sort of clarify that in the show notes, but you can bike around it. And I thought I said 17 kilometres before, but it's actually 15-kilometre loop.
Yeah,
so
I guess unless you zigzag a bit, might be 17.
Yeah. And I mean, talking about the that cultural centre where they have like creation stories and arts and crafts and things like that, when we went, we also did this it's super special and I'm sure it is quite expensive. It's like a dinner under the stars.
I did that, yeah.
And it was incredible having an Anangu person talk about the skies and all the stars and doing this amazing thing while you're sitting out there in the dark eating dinner, and it's just like really incredible. So if that's something that possibly not viable if you're a big family, but if it's just you and your partner or something like that, it's definitely a not miss, I think.
It's almost a silver service thing with just tables on the red dirt in the open.
Yeah, you're just sort of out there, and initially I think we had like nibbles and stuff on a board and champers and wine or whatever at this awesome lookout, and you're like, oh, this is great. And then they lead you down the sand dunes, and then you come around this corner and it's like revealed this massive big, super big buffet thing and chefs, and it's in the middle of the desert, silver service, big tables. It's incredible.
I think they do a similar thing at Wataka as well. I can't remember where I did mine, whether it was Uluru or Wataka, but there was two to choose from. But I have done a similar thing, and it's pretty special.
It's pretty special for sure. There's also Bruce Munro, who's an artist, has done this Field of Light installation thing. It contains over 50,000 lights.
I always thought that was a temporary thing, but it's been going for quite a while now.
Yeah, I did think it was a temporary thing too, but it's apparently it's bigger than 7 footy fields, and I haven't personally done it. It's about $44 per night, but Stefan, who's our store manager at Keswick here in Adelaide, he did it last year and he said it was amazingly awesome, but also bloody cold, so take a jacket.
So all these things are going to cost a fair bit, right? Yeah. And if you take a family, it's going to cost a bit. So I think a big tip for going to Ayers Rock is don't try not to do it on a budget. If you're doing a budget trip, then that's probably one spot that you're going to spend a few dollars.
It's probably like going to I think maybe an Uluru trip is probably very similar to like going to the snow. It's just one of those classic Aussie trips that isn't a shoestring / budget. I mean, there might be shoestring / budget options, but ideally don't go there expecting to sort of DIY everything.
No, do the experiences while you're there, because you've travelled a long way to get there. Yeah. And then it's 400 odd kilometres off that main road as well. So you're probably not going to be passing back through there anytime soon.
You're not. So. And I think also I'm trying to think about how long ago it was. Years and years and years and years ago, like maybe 6 or 7 years ago that I went. And I still think about it all the time.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not just a generic experience. It's definitely a one-off type of thing.
Iconic.
So invest, save, plan in advance.
I hope to take my kids later this year, and we're going to do that. I hope that light show's still on then, because my parents-in-law have done it as well. And they said it was really good.
Yeah,
I think
awesome.
They did it with the dinner. They usually do the high-end, top-end stuff. But
awesome.
Don't skimp on that.
Don't.
So a few tips. I think we probably covered off on some of this, but walks. I mean, Central Australia is the hardest environment I've ever been on shoes.
Yeah.
I went to an outdoor shop up there, and it's a slightly different area, but Larapinta Trail, which comes in Alice Springs, just trashes shoes. It's hot, hard ground, and the heat is usually what destroys shoes. So take good footwear. Just wear comfortable walking shoes for your walk.
If places have two-wheel drive access, that doesn't necessarily translate to the hiking and the actual, once you get out of the car, doesn't mean it's going to be easy.
Yeah, flip-flops or sandals. I mean, the ground can be hot too. And I know of people back when, we haven't talked about it, but you can't climb the rock anymore. You used to be able to climb it, but that's off the cards now for cultural respect. But people I've heard of a story of someone climbing it in flip-flops and just ended up with blisters all over his feet and having to be carted down. So the ground gets really hot, particularly in summer, obviously.
So the base walk around Uluru itself is also wheelchair accessible. You can ride your bike on it. It's a fairly good path. So you don't sort of necessarily have to stress about it too much, but definitely making good footwear. So also there's not very much shade at all. And it will be hot. So I know we've touched on it before, but just you be really careful. Make sure you're taking enough water. If you got kids with you, it's probably going to take closer to 5 hours than 3.5 hours.
Yep.
And that there are hydration stations, but they're emergency use only. So it is prioritized for you to carry enough water yourself.
Yep.
Then there's a Marla Walks, which does have wheelchair access, and it's also easy grade. It's about an hour and a half, maybe 2 kilometres. And then the Valley of the Winds Walk, which is beautiful, and
that's in the
Kata Tjuta.
Kata Tjuta, yep.
And that is 4 hours, moderate to difficult. So that's a really well worth doing that walk, I think.
Yep. Bit shadier that one because you're in amongst the rocks and things.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then the Walpa Gorge Walk, no, not wheelchair accessible, and that's moderate to difficult, maybe about an hour.
I don't actually, I haven't researched that one, but whereabouts do you know where the Walpa Gorge?
I'm not 100% sure where that one is.
We'll look that up quickly here now.
Yeah.
We haven't actually mentioned many walks in Wataka or I forget the name again.
Kings Canyon, formerly known as.
But there's good walks there as well, but we haven't covered off on that in too much detail in this episode. We're just sticking to Ayers Rock more so. But if you are travelling back up to Alice Springs, you obviously can either go back to the Stuart Highway from there and straight up to Alice Springs, a couple of stops along there. Rainbow Valley is a good one to see. Or alternatively, if you want to go from Yulara through the Marini Loop and down the West Max, there's so much stuff to see along there. So that's almost another week if you want to do that, because you can go through Wataka, do the Ridge Walk and everything, and the Gorge Walk in Kings Canyon, but Wataka's the name, and then there's heaps to see along the West Max. So
it's one of those as well things really where you're like, I need to make sure I'm coming out a fair bit of time because I don't want to miss any of this stuff.
Well, probably everything we're talking here, like 2 weeks is probably just touching the surface really. You could almost spend a week around Yulara. And then another week going back to Alice Springs at least, I'd say. So
Walpa Gorge is in Kata Tjuta National Park.
It is, okay.
Right. in amongst actual Kata Tjuta itself.
So that's a drive back the road, back up the road a bit from Yulara. Where are we here? I'm just looking at
it's west.
West, sorry, further on. Yeah, yep.
On to taking photos. We've touched on that quite a lot, but there's no drones permitted at all.
Yep.
And so just be conscious of that. If you're someone who's really into drone photography, that's not something that you take with you. Yeah.
And it's obviously well signed where not to take photos.
Yeah, totally.
Just respect that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, you did mention before about Kata Tjuta because we've talked a fair amount of Uluru, but you are immersed in it rather than just sort of observing it from the outside. But I didn't realise that it's 40 Ks away. So it is actually a fair amount away, but you wouldn't, in my opinion, you wouldn't go to Uluru without also going to Kata Tjuta.
No. And like we just said before, it's further on, not back along the road, sorry. So you're actually going further west to get to Kata Tjuta. Kata Tjuta.
So lots of walking trails. There's an awesome rim walk, which can be fairly dangerous, but it's cool because there are no sort of rails there. It's not like, you just got to be more conscious of it. And it's I
didn't know there was a rim walk there. I thought
also
we're not getting that mixed up with Kings Canyon, but we'll double check that.
You need to also respect that that's also another place that has lots of cultural significance. So just because you might be able to be sort of more immersed in it, then doesn't still the same sort of cultural respect applies there too. And then, of course, you can also get cultural tours and ranger guided tours through the Kata Tjutas as well.
We mentioned here entry's free, but you still got to pay for the national park entrance. So it's part of the Kata Tjuta, Uluru-Kata Tjuta National Park entrance. So you're paying for entrance to the national park to get there. Yeah,
but they do have like a big car park and a barbecue area and like a big interactive information centre and things like that. So that's a good opportunity for sort of like a day trip if your base is out of Yulara.
Yeah. One thing I will mention that these places, running these places must be a hell of a challenge for these companies because they're asking people to come and live in the middle of nowhere for a period of time and just for work. So it's quite often there is a struggle with staffing and that sort of thing. So you go there, you pay premium price, but sometimes the service isn't quite what you'd hope despite their best efforts because they've had to pull someone in quickly or whatever. So you kind of need to go there with a little bit of a Northern Territory, she'll be right kind of attitude.
Yeah, definitely.
Around it and just take it as it comes and enjoy what it is because you're still gonna enjoy it.
Yeah.
You just don't get caught up on the little things.
I think the sort of she'll be right attitude is really important to have wherever you go in Australia. I think especially sort of these days where people are camping more and more and they're doing these sorts of trips because we can't go overseas and we can't do all of that sort of stuff that we used to do. So there's lots of people out there. There's lots of big changing and shifting within Australian tourism and things like that. So, just make sure you're going to have a good time and not sort of getting overly stressed about stuff and really just appreciate how incredibly beautiful it is out there. And the reality is you're having an experience in the literal centre of Australia.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just quickly looking up this Olga's Rim Walk, because I have a feeling we've got that. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to look at my producer here about a rim walk at the Olga's. I'm pretty sure there isn't one. I'm pretty sure you just walk amongst it and we might be getting the rim walk mixed up with the Kings Canyon one that I talked about before, which is if you're going that way, do the rim walk at Kings Canyon because it's amazing. But I've got a feeling the Olga's, because they're just domes, right? There's not really a ridge to walk on. So maybe double check that.
Yeah, that's a good question. Not 100% sure, but yes, you're right. Kings Canyon does do a rim walk, which is the Wataka National Park.
So the Olga's, as far as I'm aware, is just a walk through the Olga's, and the rim walk is I keep getting the names mixed up, Wataka, and that's an amazing walk. But that's the one that's unfenced, right? You go right to the edge and there's a big drop. You got to be careful with kids. Yeah.
I mean, I would probably recommend factoring in a stay in Alice Springs for a good couple of days.
Absolutely.
100%. If you're going to go out to Uluru and Yulara, make sure that you are also going to stay in Alice Springs because then you can do the McDonald Ranges and there's like so much amazing stuff in there.
That McDonald Ranges I talked about before, if you're going to go to Wataka as well, then do the Morini Loop. But you can go back to the highway up to Alice Springs and then west from Alice Springs to do the West McDonald Ranges. There's heaps to see there. There's also the East McDonald Ranges. There's heaps to see there, not quite as busy.
Yeah.
But if you're going all this way, like you've driven, well, if you're from Adelaide, it's probably one of the closest things, unless you're from Darwin, I suppose.
Yeah.
But you've travelled 1,500 kilometres to get there. And it's 450 to Alice Springs. So you might as well just go there and Alice Springs is an amazing place as well. So check it out. Cool. And so much to see between Yulara and Alice Springs too. So make the most of it when you get there. It's a long way from nowhere. And nice to say you'll go back, but sometimes it doesn't happen because it's such a long way.
Definitely.
Yeah. I think we're just going to touch on mobility. I think we touched on it before. Some walks have wheelchair access, some don't. So the rim walk we talked about with Wataka, it's a different location, I know, but I don't think that's you may be able to do a portion of it by wheelchair, but there's stairs and that sort of thing. You wouldn't want to do that in a wheelchair, but the walk down the middle you can. Obviously around Uluru is flat. So that's really wheelchair accessible. And I'm pretty sure the Olg is too. Just double check, but be sure you can do it's all wheelchair accessible through there as well. So anything to add?
No.
I'm looking forward to going back there now.
Yeah, me too. I'm super excited. After doing this episode, I realized like how really excited I am to go back and do that sort of stuff.
I realize how long it's been since I've been there and how much I've kind of forgotten about little details, and I want to go back and fill in all these memories. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, that was our first destination episode. That was good. We'll try and have more for you. Obviously, we haven't been everywhere, but we'll try and do our research as much as we can and give you a bit of an outline on that. But if you've been there and you've got any hot tips, then please let us know in the Snowy's Camping Show Facebook group. And if you haven't done so, like we said before, subscribe via YouTube or your favourite podcast app. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.
Bye.